call the regular, scares me every time.
I didn't do that.
Call the public hearing and regular city commission meeting of Tuesday, January 12, 2016 to order. May we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amy, can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Foreman?
Here.
Commissioner Kuziak?
Here.
Commissioner Perry?
Here.
Commissioner Scott?
Here.
Mayor Metzger?
Here. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the commission, staff would request to amend the agenda to add an item after a public discussion. The item would be a resolution regarding the recently enacted Public Act 269 of 2016, more commonly known as Senate Bill 571, which was the one that was passed at the very end of the legislative session of 2015. This is one that amended the Michigan's campaign finance law and also imposed the gag order provision on local governments and school districts. The Michigan Municipal League late yesterday, released a resolution urging repeal of the sections dealing with local government communications regarding ballot initiatives. So this is a resolution for your consideration, and we'd ask that it be added to the agenda after public discussion.
Okay, so we will make that item 4A. Okay. And then I'll come back to you.
Yes.
Okay. First item is public discussion. Items not on the agenda. Yes, sir, Ted.
Good evening, Mayor, Commission, staff, and viewers. Ted Zachary from the 68 Devonshire and from the Environmental Committee. I'd like to give a report about how many tonnage of recyclables SACRA picked up. In September, it was 21, October, 29, November, 26, and December, 27. 27 tons. This is 10% of the total amount of debris, whatever, that they picked up. I'm going to like that figure to watch the 10%, if it goes up or down. I think that's a crucial one. Okay, next item is our group, the Environmental Committee, is going to host an event. It's going to be on March 21st at Four Ridge. It's a Monday. We're going to have two speakers there. Dr. Tom Kokorek, a professor at Wayne State University regarding the environmental science, and Melissa Sargent from the Environmental Health Ecology Center. We're going to be talking about the effects of pesticides on the environment, so specifically why and how to avoid pesticides in our lawn. Okay, another part, fellow Pleasant Ridger Bill Riley, I think that's his last name, from Wellesley. He's going to be speaking at the Hazel Park Library on 6:30 to 8. Did I say that? Thursday. It's going to be the 14th. And he'll be speaking about how to spot a criminal. And you wonder, how does that tie in with the environment? Well, if you use your imagination, that could save a lot of energy and grief. But that's going to be interesting. Okay, now for my visual aid in conclusion. Bless you. Just in time. Because I brought my timer. I think some of you remember about the timer that I had last time. We'll use the timer again. And this is concerning the oven in your house. You're going to make something from a cookbook. And what does the cookbook say almost all the time? The first thing to do, number one, preheat. Very good. Preheat your oven. This one to 400 degrees. Another one, preheat the oven to 350. Another one, first item, preheat the oven to 350. And, well, if you look at all the other parts that you have to go through, mixing everything, it takes a lot of time. But I checked my oven. It takes 7 minutes or 9 minutes to heat up to 350. So if you're mixing together, if your procedure, if your, what do you call it?
Recipe.
If your work, your preparation, like to get it all together is going to exceed the 7 and 9 minutes, take that into hand, especially during the summertime. Wintertime, it's a nice feeling, but it's costly. Okay, I think I'm all done unless there's any other questions.
We'll wait for that alarm.
Just to ask you, could you clarify the 10% again? That's 10% of everything that's picked up?
Yeah, of everything that's picked up, I think I'm going to follow that. I think it's going to be very interesting.
Okay.
To follow.
Has that stayed fairly consistent? Have you?
That's what I'm going to look into.
First time you've-
I'm going to see it for January. I'll look at that, see how it goes.
Okay.
Cool. Ted, where do you get the numbers? Do you just
I-
the soccer meetings?
I
or-
call up Sakra
Okay.
and I ask them, or email them, and they email it back to me. It's exciting. And just by the way, when I was doing this years ago, I used to give my reports. I remember the tonnage was like 17, 20, 21, 17, and now it's up there. It's higher, a lot higher, almost 10 tons. Yeah, quite a bit. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well done. Are there any other items?
Well done.
Well done. Turn off that oven when it's well. All right, then no more items. We will go to 4A. Back to Jim on the resolution.
Sure. Since this item was not in the packet, there are some copies of what the commission has available on the table in the back for anyone here who wants to follow along at home. I referred earlier to section 57, subsection 3, which is the objectionable section. I'll just read it. That the addition to state law reads, except for an election official in the performance of his or her duties under the Michigan election law, 1954 PA, etc., 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 a public body or a person acting for a public body shall not, during the period 60 days before an election in which a local ballot question appears on a ballot, use public funds or resources for communication by means of radio, television, mass mailing, or pre-recorded telephone message, if that communication references a local ballot question and is targeted to the relevant electorate where the local ballot question appears on the ballot. So this language is quite broad. There are a number of concerns with it. The way that this has been sold has been you shouldn't be spending taxpayer money to get more taxes. But this would apply to, conceivably, the way I read the language. I'm not a lawyer, but I read this, and if I'm putting together the Ridger, I couldn't put a list of candidates for city commission in the Ridger, which would be delivered during this 60-day, because it's providing information about a local ballot question. I don't know if we could broadcast our city commission meetings over public access television during this period. So this really raises a lot of issues. Specific to the millage question, last year the city spent less than $3,000 on information publications. That includes mailings, everything, for the 3 millage questions that were on the ballot. And that includes the cost to publish the Ridger. So we had fact sheets which took up about 6% of the total space of the Ridger. And that $3,000 includes the total cost for that edition of the Ridger. So really, this is an overreach by the legislature, and the Michigan Municipal League certainly agrees with that. There's a resolution which is attached to the memo that goes through a number of whereases, and again, because this wasn't in the packet, bear with me, I'm going to read this. You don't have to, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. The resolution is titled Resolution Urging the Repeal of Section 57, Subsection 3 of PA 269 of 2016. Whereas both the Michigan Senate and the Michigan House of Representatives passed Senate Bill 571 late in the night of December 16, 2015, just prior to recessing for the year. And whereas one of the last-minute amendments made to Senate Bill 571 without the knowledge of the Michigan Municipal League or other local government organizations and approved without any public testimony or awareness was the new language inserted into Section 57, Subsection 3. And whereas this new law prohibits a public body or a person acting for a public body from using public funds or resources for the purpose of communicating any information to the electorate regarding a local ballot question that is to appear on the ballot within 60 days of an election. And whereas municipal elected and appointed officials have a civic and legal duty to the residents of their communities to fully inform them regarding the issues placed before them and upon which they are asked to exercise their constitutional right to vote. And whereas existing laws, including the former language in Section 57 and decades of guidance from the Michigan Secretary of State, already prohibit the use of public funds to advocate for or against ballot issues. And whereas existing laws already provided for an allowance for elected and appointed officials to express their views without fear of violating the act. And whereas, because the new law bans only communication on local ballot issues, it creates inconsistent treatment of statewide ballot questions versus local initiatives. And whereas there are substantial questions regarding the constitutionality and legality of the new law, including a possible ban on freedom of speech. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Pleasant Ridge City Commission calls for an immediate repeal of the new language in Section 57, subsection 3 of PA 269 of 2016. And now therefore be it finally resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the city's representatives in the Michigan House of Representatives and the Michigan Senate. So that's the long and short of the resolution. I'd be happy to answer any questions. As the resolution correctly notes, we already can't advocate. We can only provide information, and now we can't even do that within 60 days of an election. This bill also included all of the campaign finance funding PAC reforms. We make no comment officially on those. Your opinion on those is your opinion, but our resolution tonight is targeted narrowly to that Section 57 dealing with local government actions.
Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Jim, for bringing this before us tonight. I feel it's very important that local municipalities voice their concern about this law at the state level, because I think it really handicaps our ability to really inform our residents. I would ask you or Greg, I know there's a penalty in here that's discussed of $20,000, and that would be levied against the city if there was a violation determined, or that be if I was caught talking about it, or one of my colleagues was caught talking about it on television within 60 days, would I then have to, pay $20,000 to the state of Michigan?
It could be both. The as proposed or as enacted, it references both the public body and a person acting for a public body, so it clearly could include a commissioner.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Obviously, that's to me the most egregious of gags on something that I believe is well within all of our rights as citizens and as elected officials, certainly to discuss at a municipal meeting. So the threat that a state government would levy such a penalty on what is basically comes down to information sharing is very troubling. As you've noted, Jim, and thank you for pointing that out, there's already laws on the books that the five of us have become familiar with, that no public funds should be used to advocate in the run-up to a ballot issue. That has been on the books for several years, as far as I understand it. So there's already prohibitions that are in place. The fact that the legislature at this time feels that need a more draconian law is really troubling to me. And like I said, I really appreciate you bringing this resolution before us this evening. The fact that in advocacy could be there could be a motivation to restrict an advocacy position, I can understand why that would be the case. But to have a complete blackout of any factual information regarding an issue that we're asking our residents to decide, I don't see any reason or any justification for that at all. Like I said, I'm very troubled by this, and I appreciate the action that staff has taken. I believe the Michigan Municipal League and many agencies throughout the state have voiced their displeasure. It was even more troubling to hear state representatives who actually voted to send this to Snyder's desk, actually upon being questioned about the merits of the bill, started backtracking and claimed that they didn't even know what the bill was about, which causes me even greater worry about our leadership in Lansing right now. But I guess I made myself clear. But like I said, I thank you for bringing this before us today.
Mr. Mayor, any question?
Yeah.
Jim, is this something we vote on?
Yes.
Resolution?
Mhm.
Okay. So I'll have comments once we have a motion.
Yeah, I was just going to ask any other questions before we.
I have a
Ask
comment,
for
but
a
I'll wait
motion.
for a motion.
Hmm?
I have a comment, but I'll wait for a motion.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the resolution?
Here I move to approve this resolution.
Is there a second
I second.
discussion?
A quick comment.
Yeah.
I believe that part of our job as a city commission and as city administration is to inform the residents. I'd like to be informed if I'm a voter, if I'm a resident, I'd like to know what's going on. I know we take the transparency charge very seriously, making sure information's out there and available for everyone who'd like to be informed if they would like to be. As part of the millage, for example, we had all these materials out there. I thought they were very factual materials. We went door to door and answered questions to people because we thought it was important that people knew what was going on. So if there's something out there that's going to stop us from doing that, and I think we're doing it not to necessarily advocate and say, hey, here's how you should vote, here's how I think you should vote. It's purely to ask or answer questions and give the materials, make sure the residents had a chance to review them. Everything you said about this is right on. It's kind of like you almost don't want us to have the ability to pass a millage or get anything done. But it's okay that it can be done at the state level, for example. It doesn't make any sense to me. So for us to not be allowed to do an important part of our job, which is to help educate the rest of our neighbors, is unacceptable to me. So I'm happy to have us sending this message. Thank you.
I agree with all of the comments that have been said thus far. I think there's a 500-person limit in the law, which affects us. And if it affects us, it must affect other communities even more. So it makes sense that all the communities stand against this this initiative. Interestingly enough, I'm wondering if it prevents people from supporting their own election if they are a sitting official, because they can't speak about the election that they're running in. It really doesn't make any sense at all as it is written, and it's something that should be taken down.
And I think that was a problem when 42 pages are dumped at the last hour.
Exactly.
With no discussion on the floor, no questions asked.
Right.
And many of the people that voted for it had no idea what was in it. So I think those are the kinds of questions that can't even be answered by anybody who voted for this.
Right.
So, more reason to get rid of it. So,
Mr. Mayor, one more comment.
yeah.
This section here that says use of public funds or resources for communication, et cetera, it's so vague. What are resources?
Right.
Are people resources? So are your words resources? Or does that mean money? Because maybe I'm not spending money to go talk to people, but I'm using my own time. Is that considered part of the city's time? It's too vague to really be of any use. I'd be afraid to do anything because I don't have $20,000 to give away. So,
Exactly.
thank you.
Anything else before we take a look? Okay, Amy?
Commissioner Foreman,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Kuziak,
Yes.
Commissioner Perry,
Yes.
Mayor Metzger.
Yes, motion carries. Thanks, Jim, for bringing that forward.
Commissioner Foreman also sent me a link to Ferndale's
Good.
resolution they passed
Good.
last night, so he was on this one too.
There are a lot of things we should be resolving against, but okay. Next item, governmental reports. I believe we... Yes, sir. Chief Nowak, please. Welcome.
Good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year to everybody. The point I want to really take the time to address today is our recent series of crimes that occurred. During the months of November and December of 2015, the city of Pleasant Ridge experienced a number of property crimes. This included an occupied home invasion, several attempted occupied home invasions, breaking and entering of garages, as well as the attempts of those garages, as well as numerous attempts and several larcenies from unlocked cars. I'm happy today to say that the Pleasant Ridge Police have arrested the person responsible for committing these crimes. With the help of numerous law enforcement agencies, Pleasant Ridge Police arrested a subject, you may note a former resident of our city, while attempting to sell back to undercover officers a stolen laptop that was taken from one of the crimes in our town. This occurred on the night of New Year's Eve. After many hours of investigation, after the arrest of the subject, a search warrant was executed at his apartment in a neighboring city, and where numerous other items, stolen property from different cities, were also located. Subsequently, that subject was interviewed and questioned, and he admitted to committing many of the crimes in Pleasant Ridge as well as the ones in the city of Ferndale. Ferndale also is actively looking at charging him with these crimes. That subject was charged based on our investigation with the Pleasant Ridge crimes by the Oakland County prosecutor with several felony charges. He's currently being held in the Oakland County Jail on a $25,000 cash bond. The Pleasant Ridge City Police, the residents, would like to extend our sincerest thanks to the other law enforcement agencies that assisted us with this investigation, which totaled, we're talking in the 600 or 700 hour range so far, in the apprehension of the subject as well as the recovery of that stolen property. Those agencies include Berkeley Public Safety, Ferndale Police, the Detroit Police Department, Michigan State Police, Oak Park Public Safety, the Royal Oak Police Department, and a special task force that wishes to remain anonymous. It should also be noted that this investigation is still active and ongoing. We're trying to tie up many loose ends, and more details would be released when possible. I'd also like to reiterate that the police department takes these and all crimes very seriously and personally. When these events occurred, the police department immediately changed our schedule and the way we do business to investigate these crimes. Pleasant Ridge officers were in plain clothes every night on foot, on bicycles, in cars, patrolling the city throughout the night. We utilized, through other resources, the use of surveillance cameras, undercover officers, and vehicles to help us with this investigation. All of our officers worked tirelessly, even throughout the holidays, in an attempt to apprehend the person responsible for these events. I know Sergeant Reed is here. He's probably... Oh, he appeared.
He's watching.
A special thank you should go to Sergeant Robert Reed for his efforts in this case. I believe that without his efforts, we probably still wouldn't have this subject in custody. He spent many hours here and on his own time he's got a huge box of files and evidence and everything that he would take home with him and work on at home while he's watching his two young sons, much to the chagrin of his wife who had plans for the holidays. His efforts and his sacrifices are much appreciated, so thank you. While investigating these crimes and talking with the victims, a resounding theme seemed to surface. People all heard or saw something that they didn't think was right, however they neglected to call the police. All of these incidents occurred in the late night or early morning hours, typically on a Sunday or on a holiday. People heard their door or windows rattle, a motion light go on or off, a dog barking louder or more ferocious than usual. One resident even saw what he thought were some shadows or something in his yard, but thought he may have been dreaming or asleep yet and went back to bed without calling. Most of these incidents occurred in the backyards of the home, out of sight or view of even anybody patrolling down the street that could possibly see these things. The suspect revealed in his interview that he stays off the streets and the sidewalks, hugging the houses and the shrubbery line of the property and using the backyards as much as possible. When he observed headlights or a car approaching, he would duck into the bushes or behind the house and hunker down until the car went by. On several occasions, he said that he did see police cars driving past and he didn't commit any crimes on those evenings. The home invasion that occurred because of an unlocked patio door wall, and almost every incident of items being stolen from the vehicles or garage, they were unlocked or open. As much as the police patrol and attempt to see all and be everywhere, the reality is that we can't be everywhere. We need the public's help to catch these criminals. It all starts with, again, I reiterate, locking your property, installing motion lights and adequate lighting to help see, alarms, and just being aware of what is going on around you. If you see something suspicious, no matter how unimportant it may seem, please call the police so we can investigate. It just might prevent the next series of crimes and then the social media onslaught that occurs afterward.
Would you like to reiterate that?
I think ending with that reiterated it.
I just want to reiterate that the police worked extremely hard on this and used all the resources available to them. And, you know, I've seen the effort that they've put into this. And so I think they obviously have all of our thanks for the good hard work that's gone into this. I think the 600-700 hours really shows to build the case, you know, to catch the criminal, to build the case, to get it to a point where it'll make it through the legal system. You know, a few nights of incidents, and then it's hundreds of hours of work that go into doing that. So I guess thank you guys.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank
And it has to be difficult to be, I know everybody tries to stay off Facebook looking at it, but to have people on Facebook questioning whether the police even care that things are being stolen, I find that to be just almost reprehensible that our community would even question that our police aren't on duty and concerned about any kinds of thefts, whether from unlocked cars or not, and to even be out there accusing the police or the commission or anybody else of not caring, or other employees. I'm sorry to see that. It just upsets me, and I hope that the residents feel you know, that know full well what you do on a daily basis, and then to go beyond the call of duty on this kind of work is tremendous.
Well, I think the
We're
majority
very fortunate.
of the people in the town that go on the Facebook are not those people. They're appreciative or whatever. There's a few that seem to want to stir the pot all the time. So this was directed a lot for everybody, but more to them that we might be small, but we're capable of handling our job here and being professional. And we're happy to say that we have somebody in custody, and hopefully that's ended this series of crimes here.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
quick question. Chief, would you mind just addressing the question of why are you not telling us what's going on when you're doing it? Why don't we know what you're doing?
Some of the nuances of the investigation, I mean, when people get their idea of police work from TV, and I wish it was that easy, we could solve crimes in an hour and get evidence back and things like that. We're currently waiting on numerous fingerprint evidence. There were probably 15 to 18 search warrants that had to be obtained, all by Sergeant Reed, who would go either wake up a prosecutor or a judge and get it approved at their house or whatever, which is the proper way to do these things. Sharing different things of how we, like in this instance, looking for the items, whether it be at pawn shops or on the sites that sell, like Craigslist or OfferUp or numerous other ones. If we put that up there that we're looking at it, then people look at Facebook all the time. I mean, most of the people are, although I'm hearing that younger people now are all on Twitter and Instagram, but I'm old, so I'm still on Facebook. So, but they monitor these things, and they would know what we're doing. I mean, we would love to make it easy, but we can't make it too easy because they know what we're doing. We're already, what I think the city manager was going to allude to too, and he did earlier with this, was that we're happy that we caught the subject. It was a former resident. It wasn't like a crew that comes in from out of towns that are a violent gang of criminals that are just committing crime in our community, but it's someone that understands our habits, our nuances, knows people know him by sight. If he's walking down the street at night, it's normal to them, as it would be to anybody, as it would be to us. So those are things that we'd love to share while it's going on, and be as transparent, as your term is used a lot here as the mayor and the commissioners, with the residents so they have the information. But it hinders our investigation. I don't think we would have caught this person if we would have advertised what we're doing and how we're doing it. So some things have to remain a secret.
Thank you.
If I may. one of the things that we were waiting for were a number of steps in the legal process to fall into place before we started talking publicly about this. We pushed out a notice, an update on the Neighborhood Watch page. One thing that everyone should be aware of is we're planning on doing a Neighborhood Watch meeting at a date to be scheduled once things start to settle down, just to give a longer version of the sequence of events and what happened and what went into it. And then just to convene the Neighborhood Watch group for maybe some actions that we might take as a community moving forward. We'll be working, Sergeant Reed and the chief and I will be working to schedule that at some point upcoming. So something we'll be doing. We don't have a date yet, but I don't think I'm making promises that we haven't already talked about by saying this publicly. But
Wonderful.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is consideration of city commission liaison reports. Start with Commissioner Foreman, committee liaison.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a few brief items tonight. The first is to close the loop on an item that I mentioned, I think, for the past 2 meetings now, and it has to do with the vacancy that was on the Ferndale Public Schools Board of Education. That seat has now been filled. The individual's name is Jackie Hart, and she was selected unanimously by the board to replace former member Raylon Leaks May, who has moved to the Ferndale City Council. The second item of note, you'll see a flyer up on the screen. It has to do with a kindergarten open house that'll take place on January 27th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Roosevelt Lower Elementary School. If you RSVP by January 19th, you will be entered into a prize raffle. Part of this, you'll meet the Ferndale Lower Elementary staff and parent organizations. You'll learn what, as they say, high-quality kindergarten and beyond looks like and sounds like. Participate in hands-on learning stations and listen to Ferndale seniors about their Ferndale schools experience. So for anyone who has children that will be going to kindergarten soon, or anyone who would just like to learn more about the kindergarten offerings and beyond, please feel welcome. Everyone is welcome to attend this event. The next item is, I think, a very unique opportunity for high school students at Ferndale High School. It's called the Challenge for the Prophet. This is a show on CNBC. As I understand it, the students at FHS have been afforded a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to work in partnership with CNBC and Universal Studios on an entrepreneurship challenge. Last month, the students were challenged to build a team of 3 to 5 members, their classmates, and create a business and come up with a plan for executing it. The students will create a business plan based on a rubric provided to them and then have a pitch that they will present to, Ferndale Schools administrators, teachers, and local business owners. The winners of the first phase will then be passed on to CNBC, and Marcus Lemonis, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, star of the TV show The Prophet, he will select the winning team. Mr. Lemonis will then visit Ferndale High School on January 26th to speak with all the students and announce the winners of the contest. So it's an exciting challenge for them, and it will give them some exposure to a more national contest, and they'll get some recognition that goes with that if they win. So very cool, exciting. Last item, just a quick mention of the next school board meeting. That will be January 20th, 7 p.m. at the high school, and this is an abnormal date. They're normally on a Monday. This will be on a Wednesday. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Next, Commissioner Perry, Planning and DDA.
The Planning Commission and DDA met on Monday, December 14th. The DDA approved the final banner designs for the Pleasant Ridge light poles along Woburn. Keep a lookout, they should go up soon, or you can see one, I'm sure, a little later in the
There
meeting
you are.
today.
We got in the hall. There it is.
The Planning Commission held public hearings on the amendment to the Pleasant Ridge zoning ordinance regarding changes to the M Manufacturing District, use table update, map update, and proposed exterior design standards. The motions were approved by the Planning Commission and will be presented to the City Commission tonight by the City Manager. Also, a request was made to the Planning Commission for capital improvement plan ideas for the January Planning Commission meeting. And they also, the Planning Commission and DDA said thank you and said farewell to long-serving commissioners David Laidlaw and Mike DeCoster for their years of service. The next meeting of the Planning Commission and DDA will be held on Monday, January 25th at 7 p.m. here at City Hall. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Scott, Historical Commission.
Just a quick update, the Historical Commission is beginning the planning work for the next Home and Garden Show this June, and our next meeting is February 3rd.
Very good. And you have a date for the?
I do, I forgot to write it down, it's June 4th, right?
June 4th.
June 4th.
Cool. Okay. Commissioner Krzyjak, Recreation.
Thank you, Mayor. Two items, two events that are coming up. The first is Wednesday, January 20th. This is the 50 Plus Club bus trips, and this will be a mystery bus trip, making stops at surprise locations in Detroit. So, sounds fun. You just get on the bus and don't know where you'll end up, but I'm sure it'll be fun. So, if you trust us enough to get on a bus, show up.
That's too funny.
On Wednesday, January 20th, it'll be at 10 a.m. And it'll last about 4 or 5 hours. So the cost for the trip is $22, but the lunch it'll be on you to make lunch arrangements. So it sounds like a lot of fun. The other fun event coming up, it's always fun. My daughter and I have had a chance to attend this over the years, and we're really grateful for all the work that goes into presenting the Daddy and Daughter Dance. This year's Daddy and Daughter Dance will take place on Friday, February 5th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And the cost for this is $5 per person. There'll be hors d'oeuvres and drinks and dancing throughout the evening, and each couple will receive a complimentary keepsake photo. And I know it's something that the dads in this community really look forward to, and it is something that we treasure. It goes by really quick. You think you're going to have a daughter for many, many years, and then you look up and they're gone. So I really encourage. We're on the 50 plus bus somewhere. No, but I would really encourage daddies who have not yet attended to really put this on the calendar, because it is a special event. And again, that's on February 5th. So
I just wanted to put in a plug for grandfathers can do it.
Yes, certainly.
But my daughter came. Both of them came last year. So
yeah,
And
certainly.
Commissioner Krzyjak,
before she was gone. She
Never
came
seen
back.
her since.
oh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
Well, I had a mother request if she could stop by and sort of enjoy the moment from the.
It's a tough crowd.
I'd
suggest not.
I think all are welcome. I mean, I don't think she would be refused. But if she and of course there are some families, who maybe the daddy is not there, or maybe there's some other situations with the family. So I think all are welcome. But yeah, I would say all are welcome. So if she really wants to show up with her daughter, I'm not gonna say she can't come in and get her picture
I
taken.
think she just wants to sort of like peer from afar. I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
We have fake mustaches left.
You do? Okay. Is there
I
a
would
viewing
suggest
room?
she peer from way afar.
So, but yeah, those are the upcoming events. So we're really looking forward to those. At this time, I know we have been working, the staff, in conjunction with Living Lab, have been working very hard on the Gainsborough Park improvements. The commission, over the course of the last few months, has been involved in kind of narrowing down the plans for the upcoming year. We had a series of meetings over the last several months to help us get a clear vision of our plan. And at this time, I just asked our city manager if he could just give us an update on where we're at with the Gainsborough Park improvements.
Sure. So the plan on the screen shows, and I think this should probably show up. This should probably show up with the lights on, I think. But the process began last July. and then proceeded throughout the fall. This was the master plan for the park that was developed in July. The reason we're showing this is because this is hand-colored and very attractive looking. The level of documents we're looking at now are engineering construction drawings, which are not at all nice to look at. But our design consultants have been beginning to work through the process of putting together construction drawings. We're at the 30% construction drawing phase now. They are working towards a 60% construction drawing, which will be ready for the February meeting. That is our schedule. That will be presented to the commission in February to basically look at and approve the direction we're going in. The 100% construction drawings will be done by April, at which time the plan will be presented to the City Commission to approve to be let out to bid. At that point, we'll solicit bids and begin the process of selecting a contractor to build this in 2016. Our total budget for phase 1 of the project is in the $800,000 to $875,000 range, just depending on where resources fall. There's the Parks millage, which is the majority of that funding. There are some other sources of money that we can use to supplement that as well. This led to some, I think, intense and difficult decisions on which improvements that are on the master plan go first as part of phase 1. We didn't have enough money when all was said and done to build everything that was on the master plan all at once, which led us to have to prioritize some improvements. The phase 1 improvements, which you'll see listed on the left side of the screen, begin with relocating the community garden and dog park entrance to the end of Kensington. This is the end of Kensington here, and this is where 99 currently is to be removed, which will become a connection. Community garden will be moved back here where it has much more solar access than the shady, sort of overgrown, weedy spot that we have now for it. So this should vastly improve the appearance of the community garden. The dog park entrance will also move to this location where there will actually be parking available for the dog park, which should make for a better entrance into the dog park. This also provides a continuous walking path connection so that anyone can hopefully have a much nicer time walking their dogs to the dog park through the new, improved, beautiful Gainsborough Park. The walking path system, of course, is one of the major improvements that will be made. You'll see there will be a series of asphalt and concrete sidewalks and pathways that will connect you all the way from Sylvan through the entire park up to Kensington and then beyond. Seating space in the heart of the park area, and I will, didn't work, so let's do this. This is the heart of the park area. You'll see this is the existing tot lot. This is where the current play structure is. This area right here, and it looks a little bit different than this now that the more detailed design is being done, but this will be a seating gathering space. It will be approved. There will be some cafe tables and chairs that will be available there. It will very much improve the usability of this for get-togethers, for events, for you name it. Right now the plan is to do some concrete steps down to a sunken area, so you'll have informal seating on the concrete steps as well as the tables and chairs. Should be a big improvement. An irrigated open lawn area. This is unstructured, informal play space. Right now this is where the old t-ball, kind of baseball diamonds, and we've got a couple bleachers and little kids play soccer here. This will all remain for that open unstructured play. This area will be irrigated. In the summertime when we get dry weather, this area gets very dry, hard packed, so the irrigation will keep that nice, lush, green place to play. The tennis court is in need of some TLC, and the basketball courts as well. This area will be resurfaced. We are examining a couple different options for what that surfacing is. There's a sport court tile system which can be used. It's approved by all the governing bodies for the various sports. The tennis and basketball federations all approve it for use. We're also looking at what it would cost to resurface and asphalt. So that's a decision that will come at the 60% construction drawing phase as those costs come in. The Amherst parking lot, which is in between the current basketball courts and the brick DPW building, will be reconstructed and reconfigured. It'll have the same number of parking spaces available, but it'll take up about half the space. Right now, the footprint for that parking lot is about this. So we're going to turn it into more green space with a rain garden and reclaim some green from where all the asphalt is. Gainsborough Street will be pedestrianized, entirely closed to traffic between Amherst and Wellesley. And then one house has to gain access through a driveway. So that house will have access through this. It'll be I guess you could call it a shared use pathway with very distinct design elements to discourage any cars from driving down here, except for the one person who knows that it's a sanctioned activity. We're looking at some bollards to be placed to not allow through access to even further discourage any cars from driving down there. DPW yard fence improvements. This fence right now, which is about 12 feet tall and extends all the way down to the southwest corner of the building. That fence will be lowered to a 6-foot fence, more decorative black or green vinyl coated, so it'll hide a little bit better instead of the 12-foot tall galvanized steel appearance. And the fence will now terminate at the southeast corner of the building, creating some more green space and shielding for the building itself and softening this whole area, making it look a little bit less industrial and much more park-like. Baseball diamond improvements, resurfacing the baseball diamond, adding some fencing around the dugout area, putting in new benches, replacing the backstop, again with probably a black vinyl coated fence to have a little bit nicer look and feel, and painting the existing poles from the galvanized steel color to a black color. And then adult exercise equipment. There'll be an adult exercise station with some equipment, likely in this area here. So future phase 2 improvements, when finances and grant monies exist, one of the strategies is these are all projects that are fundable by grants. So we can start applying for grants every chance we get. When they come through, we can start to opportunistically build these. These are also improvements that are of a cost and size that they can be handled by the city in a budget year with ongoing money that we have on a year-to-year basis, capital improvement monies. So the first one is a pavilion structure that would be that's proposed to go next to the existing shelter. It'd be an open, basically a roof on posts. There would be a covered gathering space. There's a secondary, or I guess another play area that's proposed to be developed in this area down at the end of Sylvan, in between the baseball diamond and Sylvan. There'll be a further recreation opportunity. There's the swings that are there right now. We're proposing to leave the swings for the time being, and then when we get the funding and the plan in place for what that area ultimately looks like, those swings will be taken out. Public art was one of the things in the plan that will come at a later date. We have lighting improvements, potentially doing low pedestrian scale bollard lighting along the pathways so that we can remove the DTE streetlights, which are basically in a few locations through the park that don't really create the nice human scale lighting, but they do the job of providing lighting for the time being. So upgrading the lighting would be a future project. And then there's a walking path, likely a crushed limestone or crushed granite that would extend around Flynn Field that would provide for an additional walking loop. Right now, a walking loop through the park exists. You can come down, you'd have to loop and then go back on the same pathway here. If you're doing an exercise circuit or walking circuit, the crushed granite or limestone path would just allow you to continue around that way. So it'd be another expansion of options, I guess, in the park. And I had to do this today from memory because our server crashed, so I couldn't get to any of our files. So if I missed anything on the phase 2 improvements, please chime in. But I think I covered them all. What would remain to be done. So that's where we're at. So Living Lab is working towards the 60% drawings. Those will be coming back in February, and this is where we're going. We're on track and on schedule, towards a very substantial and exciting improvement for 2016.
Jim, hadn't we decided on a second pool? No?
There's actually a water slide.
Okay, you forgot that.
No water slide.
It's in my backyard.
No pools.
No, this is great. Yeah, I think you captured everything.
Okay.
Without a server, nothing? Wow.
Walking on high water out there. I was on a high wire act with that.
Well done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? All right. Let's move to the next item. It's consent agenda. I'm not going to list, we have 7 items, but I did want to mention, we give liaison reports for our various committees, but we seldom mention the names of those residents who are good enough to volunteer and put in a lot of time in our committees. So I just want to mention the few who are being reappointed. We go through 3-year terms, and then there is an option for us to be reappointed for a second 3-year term if you so choose, and then after 6 years you phase out. And we do have a couple openings, 1 opening on Historical Commission and 2 openings on the Planning DDA that we will be filling for the next, in February we'll announce new names. But I just wanted to mention those people who are being reappointed. So we have reappointment of Mr. James Copen and Mr. Conrad Stack to the Pleasant Ridge Historical Commission, term to expire December 31st, 2018. The reappointment of Ms. Martha Schlesinger to the Pleasant Ridge Planning Commission, Downtown Development Authority, term to expire December 31st, 2018. And the reappointment of Mr. Christopher Budnick and Ms. Christine Matthias to the Pleasant Ridge Recreation Commission, term to expire December 31st, 2018. I wanted to thank them for continuing their service and to also thank the other residents who are members of those commissions as well. So, anything else? Then I would ask, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Your Honor, I move that the consent agenda be approved.
So, support?
Second.
Any discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Commissioner Perry?
Yes.
Commissioner Foreman?
Yes.
Commissioner Kuziak?
Yes.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Mayor Metzger?
Yes, motion approved. Next item, approval of the capital project fund deficit elimination plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item relates to a deficit that the city showed in our capital projects fund in our 2015 audited financial statements. This was a planned deficit. The capital projects fund houses, among other things, the street infrastructure improvements, and has accounted for the park, the expenses related with the park planning project so far. The reason that it was in a deficit is because the city was self-financing, basically loaning ourselves money to complete these projects rather than securing outside financing, which we'd have to pay interest for. We're using SCAF funds and other fund balances that we have, and then we pay ourselves back. We have dedicated funding sources, of course, through the infrastructure millage and the parks millage to pay for these. The state had some issues with what they require in this case. So before you is a deficit elimination plan in a format that we think and hope will satisfy the state at this time. It includes some accounting changes for how we handle the infrastructure improvement plan, the capital improvement fund, and how we plan to eliminate that deficit. This doesn't change anything that we're doing. It doesn't change anything in our plan. It doesn't move a penny anywhere that hasn't already gone. It's really just changing how it's presented for the state, and also the state is requiring a specific city commission action in support of the deficit elimination plan. So there's a resolution in front of you that would do that. We'll send it up to the state, and hopefully we'll be done with this. Brian from Plant Moran is here. He can correct me if anything I've said is factually or substantively incorrect. Or if you have any questions, I would encourage you to direct them to Brian.
Did you have anything to add?
No, Jim was 100% correct in everything he said.
All right, that's great. Are there any questions?
Quick one. We spoke before the meeting, but just if you could confirm this for everyone. Is there something the city did wrong that makes it necessary to now do this? Did we make a mistake?
No, city absolutely did not make a mistake. The state would prefer that cities not ever enter into a deficit. Their concern is that you don't have a funding mechanism on the back end to pay yourself back. That's how some cities got themselves in trouble. They'd have a deficit that couldn't be corrected, and it would grow over time. This is the exact opposite of that. You have the money, the voters have approved 2 different millages that pay for these projects, and so this is strictly a timing issue. The state requires
the city, when it knows it has a deficit, to send in a plan. They then are supposed to approve it, and then we move on our merry way. And we did, as soon as we knew that there was one, we did prepare it. We submitted the plan to the state prior to the financial statements being approved, which is what they want. But in the fine print of what they want want literally council just to say, yes, we all agree this is what we're doing. Everybody say yay, and then we send it on. And so there's no plan in place. It's just moving it together for presentation purposes. So by adopting the resolution that is in front of you, we'll be able to give a piece of paper to the state that says, yes, we all agreed. And like Jim said, it's just a presentation issue in the financials. Your budget stays the same, your activity stays the same, you can do the same projects, the millage is enough to cover the deficit, everything's fine.
We knew the money was coming in, we spent money in advance, knowing that it's not a problem.
Not
It was
a
all
problem.
intentional and planned.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other? All right, then do I have a motion to approve the deficit elimination plan?
Mayor, I move that the proposed deficit elimination plan for the city's capital project fund be approved.
Is there support?
Support.
Any other discussion? Can we have a vote, please?
Commissioner Foreman,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Kuziak,
Yes.
Commissioner Perry,
Yes.
Mayor Metzger.
Yes, motion approved. Next, thanks a lot, Brian, that was tough, huh? Appreciate you coming in.
Happy to. Have a good
Night.
night.
Thank you.
You too. Next item, establishing a public hearing on February 9th, 2015 at 7:30 PM to solicit public comments on the following item. Ordinance amending the Pleasant Ridge zoning ordinance regarding the proposed exterior design standards, M-manufacturing district, use table update, and map update. Jim?
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
We have sort of an omnibus zoning amendment, but really it's dealing with a couple specific items. You have a memo in your packet. Actually, there's two memos in the packet, and we broke it in two parts because there's two things that will happen with this agenda item. And next month, this will actually be two different agenda items. The first thing that's happening, and this is specific to the exterior design standards that are proposed. The first thing that happens is there's an amendment included in the zoning amendments which changes how we do design standards, because we already do have design standards in place. This is just changing the way that we administer those and what they are. So next month what will happen is the zoning amendment will go first, and then the new proposed zoning amendment, instead of listing a set of 8 subjective standards, which we'll talk about in a moment, it references a standalone document, our exterior design standards. So next month what would happen after the public hearing is if you approve the zoning amendments, the next agenda item would be approval of the exterior design standards to be that standalone document that staff would then enforce. Tonight, it's all part of the same agenda item, and I'll go through each one of those. I'll start with the zoning amendment, and we'll double back before we get to the exterior design standards part of it. But what is proposed in the zoning amendment are first some modifications to the ordinance structure. Currently, the zoning ordinance contains separate sections for each zoning district that individually lay out the purpose, permitted uses, development standards, which are setbacks, height, lot coverage, etc. for each district. And then each district section has tables that summarize the uses that are permitted, can be permitted as a special use, and accessory uses in that particular zoning district. And then there's a mini schedule of regulations that summarizes the dimensional standards for each zoning district. And then later in the zoning ordinance, there's a table that lists the permitted uses and special land uses for all of the districts together. And then there's further another section that is a schedule of regulations for all of the zoning districts together. So this is duplicative. What happens is when we want to change a requirement, we have to change it in 6 different places throughout the ordinance. And that just increases the chances that mistakes will be made or inconsistencies, and it's really pretty much unnecessary. So the proposed amendment would eliminate the separate sections for each zoning district. Instead, we'll have one table of permitted uses, we'll have one schedule of regulations, and then we'll take all of the intent and purpose statements for each zoning district and have those in another place. And that's it. One place and we're done. So a lot of the amendments deal with that. There are a few changes in use permitted in the manufacturing district, which is proposed to be changed to the workplace district. And bear with me for a second, I will pull up the zoning map to show where this is.
It's our city. It is.
So this is the zoning map for the city. The change to the manufacturing district, this is the manufacturing district. It's the part of Pleasant Ridge that most people don't know is part of Pleasant Ridge. This is where Hello World, before that E-Prize, this is the old brewery building where they were located. This is the old Walker Wire complex that straddles actually Pleasant Ridge and Ferndale. The corporate boundary goes through the building. So this area is manufacturing. With E-Prize being located in this building, it's been used for professional or technology office uses for a number of years. We're in a different time now where old buildings, particularly older industrial buildings in more built up, closer in areas, there's a lot different uses. There's a wider range of uses that like to go in those buildings now. And our manufacturing district was very much a manufacturing district by the list of uses that were permitted in it. So what is proposed under this amendment would be to broaden the range of uses that go in these buildings in this particular area over here along Bermuda, to include office, to include even potentially residential, to include restaurant, food uses, really anything that doesn't create off-site impacts through noise, vibration, glare, odor, all of those performance standard type considerations. We're still limiting the types of manufacturing uses that can go there. They've always been limited to some extent to not heavy manufacturing uses. You know, we don't want to smelt aluminum or anything over there, or render animal fat. Those are the things that we don't permit. Certainly, we're not going to crack hydrocarbons over there. So those protections will stay in place. So that's what's proposed. Really recognizing what the site's been used for recently and what the potential for it is in the future. Part of that, there's a change in how we list manufacturing uses in the ordinance currently. There's an exhaustive list of things actually in the ordinance. We're just changing that to refer to NAICS codes, North American Industrial Classification System codes. It's an easier way to do it. You put those in the definition and then you just have a line in the table. It makes it cleaner. There are some zoning amendments that are proposed. Of course, this would be changing from M to W for manufacturing to workplace. We're proposing to change the zoning here at 99 Kensington from single-family residential to park. We're proposing to change Roosevelt School. These highlighted green parcels right now are all zoned single-family residential. We're proposing to change those to the Parks, Recreation, and Municipal zoning, which is what the community center, which is what City Hall really just reflects the existing use, and with the school district recommitting to school operations at Roosevelt. That just reflects what the building will be, hopefully for a long time. And then finally, there's some changes proposed to section 82-166, which replace the neighborhood compatibility standards with the proposed exterior design standards. And I will now pause to ask if there are any questions on the zoning amendments before I go into a discussion of the design standards.
Yes.
Jim, I just noticed, and thank you for bringing it up, the change in the status for the elementary school, Roosevelt. I know there was some discussion over the last few months as far as the future of that location. The school district has committed, and Commissioner Foreman, maybe you know how long is that commitment? Is that something that's been formally laid out as far as we're committed for so many years, or?
Not that I know of, indefinite.
Okay, indefinite. So if that, let's say 10, 15, 20, just down the road, if the district was to reverse course on their attitudes towards Roosevelt and did pursue maybe putting that location on the market, would that be by our zoning reclassification, would that be something that would prevent the district from, selling to a developer?
It would not prevent the district from selling to a developer.
No?
What it does is it gives the city a little bit better leverage
Okay.
and in negotiations about what actually happens at that site.
Okay.
If I could just add something about that, I would feel that would be an extremely unlikely scenario since the district has already sold off or is in the process of selling off their other buildings.
Mhm.
So with the reconfigurations that are happening, that will now be the primary K through 2 elementary school,
Yeah.
and then 3 through 5 will be at John F. Kennedy. So every student will go through both schools. There really will be no other option
Okay.
building available that I know of that they could use. So I wouldn't see any changes happening
Right.
in their future, possibly long-term future.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else on the zoning? Okay. So the exterior design standards, and now we may want to dim the lights. Thank you. So the exterior design standards, what is the purpose of this? Well, for one thing, Pleasant Ridge is unique in that almost the entire city is located in a federal historic district. And so recognizing that in historic districts, it's very common to have design guidelines, design standards in order to uphold the integrity of the district. These design standards are intended to accomplish just that. This would not be a state historic district. That entails creating a historic districts commission, which entails going to a historic districts commission for approval for anything from painting your front door to really anything that happens on the outside of a house. This is an approach that would set some very specific standards for what we expect in terms of construction projects, renovations, new construction primarily in the neighborhood, just to make sure that what's new fits in with what's old and that we preserve the character that I think we all love in Pleasant Ridge. The current standards, the problem is that they are subjective. They are neighborhood compatibility standards, and there's a number of things that talk about being compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, but don't really explain what that means. So it falls to the administrator of the ordinance to determine what is and isn't compatible, and of course that's an issue of debate. So the new standards are very specific in terms of what is expected and what must be done. The idea is that anyone who wants to build in the city or renovate a house in the city substantially can pick up the document and know exactly what they need to do, know exactly what we expect, so that we're all very clear from the beginning. And hopefully then allowing for consistent enforcement. One thing you don't want is the enforcement of the ordinance to change depending on who happens to be enforcing that ordinance at a particular time. You'd rather have clear direction so that you get consistent enforcement over time. The current standards, as they read, say that any new construction or modification to an existing structure exceeds 25% of the principal building shall conform in size, bulk, and dimensional characteristics to adjacent properties within 500 feet of the subject property. And as a practical matter, within 500 feet of the subject property typically takes in about a third of the city. The review shall be limited to building height, lot frontage and size, lot width at the right-of-way, building entrances, building placement on the lot, including setbacks and distances between buildings, architectural compatibility with surrounding properties in the same neighborhood, and please, I don't know what that means, but intensity and dimensional characteristics compatible with surrounding properties, utilization of similar materials. So it falls to the zoning inspector to complete the review, and that can be appealed to the Board of Appeals. So, and the Board of Appeals, of course, is the City Commission. So that's the existing situation, and I think if you can just think through for a moment, if you have a house that's proposed and you have to do this, it's a difficult exercise. So the proposed design standards, some first principles for these are establish clear and consistent expectations. We're not trying to adjudicate architectural style. We don't want to say Tudor, yes, Greek Revival, no. It's really preserving design freedom and being style neutral. Well, regulating elements that are common to all buildings. All buildings have doors and windows, and they all have walls. And so it's making sure that how you put those pieces together are done the right way. Standards for traditional design elements, if they're used. These are things like roofs, eaves, friezes, you have headers over openings in the walls. These were all done in a very specific way in traditional design because these all serve a structural purpose. And we'll talk more about what that means today in a little bit. Allowing for non-traditional styles, if they're true to an identifiable style. Architecture did not stop in 1920 when modern materials made traditional building unnecessary. You could build in new ways with new materials, and that opened up our modernist 20th century styles. We're not seeking to prohibit non-traditional styles. We have a number of houses in the city, a number of houses actually, that are not traditional, that sit within the neighborhood context in a harmonious and compatible manner. What we're seeking to do with non-traditional styles is to make sure that they maintain the human scale of the community that exists, make sure that they contribute to the existing streetscape and street character that we have. Sometimes modernist building styles can be hostile to the street, and we want to make sure that we have houses that fit in and are good neighbors. And if you do some certain design things, you can have a modernist house next to a traditional house, and they all contribute to the quality of the neighborhood. And so we want to aspire to great. And at bare minimum, we want to prevent mediocre or bad architecture in town. So this is something, a quote I ran across: the product of our effort must withstand trend and fashion and be held with deep affection from generation to generation. Otherwise, it's disposable. And if it's disposable, then why are we doing it? People move to Pleasant Ridge and reinvest in these houses. People move to Pleasant Ridge and take care of the houses because they are held with affection from generation to generation. Whereas, many houses that were built at the same time as the houses in Pleasant Ridge are no longer there because there was no affection for those houses. And so we want to make sure that we continue to build really lovable quality places, lovable quality houses that future generations will hold in the same esteem and continue to take care of and maintain. So the basis for these standards is traditional architecture. That's really the basis for most architecture in Pleasant Ridge. And there are three major elements that fall into traditional architecture. Human proportion. Everything in traditional architecture is based on the proportion and scale of the human body. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a minute. But apparent structure. In the past, buildings had to be built true to the limitations of the materials that they were built out of. So you really only had two building styles, post and beam. Think of Stonehenge. Posts that carry the weight into the ground, and then a beam which connects them, and that's what carries the weight of the building. The building had to hold itself up. Or if you built out of masonry, the masonry itself was actually what was holding up the walls. Today, you build a stick-built frame and then you slap some brick on the outside, kind of like wallpaper. Well, in the past, when you're building with masonry, if you're going to put in a window, you have to somehow make sure that the whole house doesn't crash down into the window. So you had to do certain architectural things to make the house stand up on its own. And when those are missing, you can tell when you look at a house that's built today that doesn't replicate those structural elements the right way. And finally, decoration. That's not something we do today in modern architecture and modern building. It's all very clean and sleek and industrial and not a lot of decoration. But in the past, decoration was a big part of buildings. So when we talk about elements that we'll regulate massing and composition. That is where the different parts of the building go, how you lay out the windows, where you put the front door, how the building mass sits on the lot. Apparent structure, we've talked about that. It's truth in materials. If you have a brick house, it should look like it's a brick house that would hold itself up and not fall down if you took all the steel bits out of it. Openings, gables and eaves, roofs, attachments, these are all things that the elements that the design guidelines will address. And so this is an example of, really this is from Greek architecture, but this all came down through classical architecture, through Roman, and even down to the way that 97% of our houses are built. based on these aesthetic choices that all came from functional elements of Greek buildings. So this is your post, this is your beam. This is what held it all up. This is where the roof came down, and this is the gutter. So every house has a gutter, underneath which there's the fascia. These were the joists which held up the ceiling. You had a top plate, which is the bed molding upon which the rafters sat. All of these things are part of traditional architecture. You have the frieze, and then the architrave, and then the corona, and it all goes together. If you look at a Greek temple, that's where all of these different elements of the cornice come in. And they all came from functional elements that are shown here. Today we do them for decoration because we don't build this way necessarily. But that's why these things developed the way they are. Human scale, buildings were always oriented vertically, replicating the human body. Traditional architecture is typically symmetrical, much like a human face or human body. And you'll see on this traditionally styled building, it is symmetrical. It mirrors itself across the center line. All of the windows and all the openings have a vertical orientation. And this is a very sort of traditional, classical arrangement of building elements. So this has human scale, and it relates to the street. Everything that's on the front of this as well, the front door, this is a person door. This is a front porch. Notice the garage where your machine goes is in the back of the house, tucked away in the utility, sort of in the service area. This is sort of like a dumpster on a commercial building. It goes in the back. And the house, typically a lot of houses we see today where you look and you've got a big driveway and a garage that faces the street, and then you've got sort of a random arrangement of some windows up here, and you can't even find the front door. I might be making judgments here, but this says this is a place that's for cars, whereas this is a place for people, and it contributes to the street and the character and quality of the street when you're a person walking down the street. Here, you drive your car into the garage, and you get out of your car and close your garage door and go in the house, and you don't ever have to see anybody. And one of the things about Pleasant Ridge is you do see your neighbors walking down the street a lot, and that's it's a key part of the character here. Apparent structure. These are Roman ostia. These were built 2,000 years ago, plus or minus. They're still standing today, and they're all built out of brick. And the key point here is that these are simple brick arches that were part of the building. They're not held up by steel. They've weathered 2,000 years of abandonment and neglect, and they're still standing. The building is still going strong. And this is where that apparent structure comes in. This is a masonry mass built building. Today, you see some elements that try to replicate these building elements that went into traditional buildings to greater or lesser success. So the test, would the building stand up? With a traditional building, when you evaluate a building, whether or not it meets these design criteria, primarily, it's one of the major ones is, would the building stand up if you took all the steel bits away? And this is an example of a building that has tried to replicate the fact that, brick doesn't levitate. So typically you have to do a header or an arch over a building opening. And here they tried to replicate that, but you'll see that these are just vertical bricks that are stacked on top of a steel lintel. If you took that steel lintel out, you'd have a guillotine where all the bricks would just go whoosh and fall right down, because there's nothing that carries the weight above the window, distributes the weight to the parts of the building that actually connect to the ground. Because what you have to do when we have a brick mass building is you've got all of this mass here that when you have an opening that can't support it, you have to take that weight, take the forces, move the forces over to the parts of the building that connect to the ground, and this wouldn't do it. So that's the type of thing that we'll be looking at for authenticity. And again, we're not saying that you have to actually build a masonry arch that will hold up the weight of the building. You can still do the steel lintel, but just detail this correctly. Detail it in a proper manner. It takes a little bit of extra work, and you notice it. Even if you can't put your finger on it when you're looking at a building, you notice it when it's done right versus when it's done incorrectly. So again, we've talked about these. This is in the introduction of the design guidelines, what they do. These are all available online and in a packet. Administrative procedures. The design guidelines are a mixture of requirements with suggestions. It's about 50-50. When we say shall, it's something that you have to do. When we say should, it's something that we recommend you do, but we're not going to require you. The applicability of the design standards is exactly the same as the neighborhood compatibility standards are today. So this isn't an expansion or a new requirement. It's merely a restating of how we do what we do already. If you are a homeowner and you are simply maintaining your house or making some renovations to your house and you're not expanding it, you're not going to fall afoul of these. This is not going to require homeowners to do all kinds of changes to, the facade of their house. That gets very expensive. We're not going to do that. It's only when you have new construction and when you're doing a 25% or greater expansion, and even then if you're adding on to an existing building, it will only apply to the new parts of the building. You won't have to go back and change existing parts of the building you're not touching, because that would be unfair. It does not apply to maintenance using equal or better materials. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Sections that apply, some apply to all buildings, most apply only when a building element's proposed. So we have standards for headers and masonry walls. If you're not doing a masonry wall, if you're doing a clapboard or wood siding thing, those masonry header elements don't apply to you. So it's kind of a choose your own adventure in a way. So the review authority is the Planning Commission when there's an application that requires Planning Commission approval. So if there's a site plan for a commercial building, the Planning Commission would review the building design. If it's a single-family house, and in that case it's just a building permit issued administratively, the city manager, who is the zoning inspector, who is me, would review the plans at that time. So massing and composition, really this is about neighborhood compatibility. It's about where the building sits on the lot, where those doors and windows are, just to make sure that the character and the context of the neighborhood is upheld. This is a building that is fantastic, and I love this house, but it would be wildly inappropriate in Pleasant Ridge, because as you see, the context here is out in the woods somewhere, where you have a lot of property. In a neighborhood setting, this does not fit into Pleasant Ridge context. If this is the back of your house, that's a different story. We're only regulating the front of the house when it comes to our massing and composition, the street facing, the public realm. Traditionally, if you look at the houses in Pleasant Ridge, they're typically very simple massings, one or a few boxes. If you look at a new house in Oakland Township, it is not a simple massing. And the easy way to tell if you have a simple massing or not is look at the roof. In Pleasant Ridge, we have a lot of roofs that are simply this, or this with a gable end. They're very simple. If you look at a house that we built today where you have 19 different roof planes because you've got 43 different things going on, that's not traditionally how you would build, because that's very expensive and I would say wasteful way to build. So simple massing is preferred. And then a hierarchy of massing, and that's basically symmetry in the building, or if you have asymmetry, that you can define the center of gravity for the building. If you have a symmetrical building, you could put a fulcrum and put the building on a platform and it would balance. If you have an asymmetrical composition to the building, where you might have the entrance to one side, typically the mass of the building is balanced enough so that you could find a center of gravity on the house and it would balance itself. So when you have a hierarchy of massing, it's just making sure that you are remaining within a kind of the conventions of traditional massing. And again, I got ahead of myself. I got ahead of the PowerPoint, so we've talked about that. And then base, middle, top, that's just like your feet, the body, and then your head. Traditional architecture typically has a base. If you had a column, you had a pedestal, then you had the part of the column, and then at the top you had a capital on the column. Same thing, you have the cornice and then the mass of the building, and then you typically have foundation plantings or something that plants that building into the ground. Walls. We talk about entrances. You need to have a prominent human entrance. Already we restrict the amount of a front facade that can be garage. We're not changing that. You can't have more than 30% of the width of the building be a front-facing garage, and that garage can't protrude past the front wall of the building. Most of our houses don't even have a garage anywhere in the front yard. They're all tucked in the back, as was the case in the past. So we need to continue that pattern. And this is an example of how putting your garage out front and then tucking everything back is, a perfectly fine way to build a house, but not in Pleasant Ridge. And then transparency. There's a pretty typical rule that traditional buildings are between 15 and 35% transparent on the first facade, and by transparency we mean doors and windows, as a percentage of the total facade area of the front facade. So we just want to make sure that we stay within that. It provides enough connection and view to the street to make it feel like the house is open and welcoming, but also maintaining privacy and not having a entire glass wall in the front. Building materials, we have restrictions on what kind of materials you can use, and typically these are masonry, brick, stone, clapboard, wood are things that realistically replicate these. So we talk about building materials, where the preference is for durable, natural materials or a realistic depiction thereof. And we use an arm's length, eyes only rule for these. If you can touch it, it should feel like a real material. So wood siding, for instance. Today we have a number of materials that replicate wood siding, aluminum, vinyl siding, but also hardy board, with this, which is a cementitious siding. If you go up and knock on wood siding, it does that. If you go up and knock on cementitious siding, it does that. If you go up and knock on vinyl, it doesn't do that. So the eyes only rule is if you can't go up and touch it, if it's higher up on a building and you can only see it from far away, it doesn't have to meet that touch test. It can be a different material. So that's why for cornices you could use EIFS, Dryvit, the styrofoam product, because you can't touch it. And that's a fine way of doing those parts of the building you can't touch. So we prohibit vinyl siding on new buildings. If you have vinyl siding right now in your building, on your house, you can replace it with vinyl siding. If you have wood clapboard, or if you have hardy plank on your house right now, we're not going to let you go down to wood siding. This does represent an upfront cost premium. Right. However, on a life cycle basis, the hardy plank is more durable, it lasts longer, you can paint it. On a life cycle basis, it starts to even out. And again, this is where you might move out, and the person who moves in after you might benefit from that. But from a durability standpoint, this is something that is in the standards. Again, this is a historic district. Historic districts have material requirements everywhere. This is not something that we are imposing that nobody else does. Another consideration with vinyl is the way the J channels go. You have these J channels and there's shadows, and you can tell that the vinyl tucks behind these but doesn't butt up to it. Whereas with a hardy plank, you actually have a board that it butts up to, exactly like wood siding would. It's one of those things that even if you're looking at it from far away, you can pick it out and tell that it's not actual wood. So it actually violates the eyes only rule as well. Header elements and masonry walls. I talked about Stonehenge earlier. This is the way that you cross over an opening in a building. This is the simplest way of doing it. You have stone lintels, where this is just, again, it's a piece of stone that you cut out and put over the opening. This is where it carries the weight of the building. This here and this here distributes the weight of the building down to the ground. Arches are again a very standard way of distributing those forces down to the ground. Pointed at Gothic arches, these are jack or flat arches. These are all accepted traditional ways of doing it. What we want to avoid is the appearance of brick wallpaper, basically just detailing it right. And this is where any arch will always, the elements of the arch will always meet at a central point. And so if you're evaluating an arch, you can just look at how the joints go, and they'll always meet at a point. Sometimes people will try to do an arch, and these are all at the same pitch, so all these lines would actually be parallel. At least you're trying, but get it right. So these are all the different ways you can do an arch, and these are ways you can do it wrong. Where here they just have a guillotine, and then they put in a keystone, which a keystone only has specific times when you should use it. This is not one of them. And then they cut out a little triangle piece to be like the ends of the arch, and again, at least they're trying. Here they didn't even try at all. This is just a magic levitating brick, or the strongest window in the world. And I dare anyone to go home and take 2 rows of bricks, stack them together like this, and then pick them up and see if see if you can make them stand up. Window casing, making sure you get the details right around the windows. These should be at least a couple inches wide to make it look like it's a wood board that was placed around there like they would have done traditionally. Eaves and gable ends. This is a pork chop eave. It's value engineering at its finest. Eaves are a very traditional design element, and there's a very right and wrong way to do those. You can see that this is simple. There is no eave return here. That's a fine detail. Here you have an eave return, and it's got a flat. It should be flat or very low pitched on the top. Putting the little roof on all the eave returns like we typically do now, that's really only appropriate in Queen Anne architecture, and we just use it everywhere now. You'll see here in these older buildings that they did it right, and this is how you do it right. This is just terrible, really. Columns, the columns should be spaced no farther apart than they are tall. And again, this is a vertical proportion. Here you'll see it's a kind of a square proportion, and that's the maximum that you should go. Proportion, there's some width of the column versus how tall it is, that's spelled out. Beam column alignment, the width of the column should match the width of the beam at the top, and then the capital should typically extend beyond. If you walk around in Pleasant Ridge, the next time you're on your walk, you'll see this, they actually did it wrong because the capital is narrower than the beam that it's supporting. Here it's correct, where these more craftsman style columns are the same width as the beam, and then the capital element extends beyond. Look at this around town. You'll see that there's a lot to do it the right way and a lot to do it the wrong way. Base and capital elements, this is a base. You see there's a little base on the column, and then there's a capital. You should never have just a post with nothing around it. This can be very simple. You could just be getting a lumber yard and putting butt joining a piece of wood around the top and bottom to just at least provide some base and capital. Dormers, this is another thing a lot of people do wrong. You shouldn't side. The sides of a dormer should be jammed with boards like this, and then the roof above should be a capital element. Attachments, when you have bay windows that protrude out, you can easily do this with steel now, but at least just provide a little decorative element, a decorative corbel or bracket to look like it's carrying the weight back into the building to go down. It just finishes the building and provides that extra element of apparent quality. And then fireproof, if you're a chimney, bring it to the ground. Don't have it protruding out. So that's a very fast, maybe not very fast, but that was as fast as I could make it, spin through what the design standards do. They're all available online for your review. This is an example of how we're trying to be very specific about what we expect, why we expect what we expect. Whenever you have a regulation, I think you should be able to explain this is why we are doing this, because otherwise it's just, well, because I said so, and that nobody's comfortable with that. So I just wanted to be very clear about why everything that's in the design standards is there, that it all has a basis in traditional design. And I would encourage everyone, as you walk around town, look at the buildings, think about all of these kind of elements. Once you start to see them, you can't unsee them. And it's kind of incredible, how many houses in town get it right, and in fact how many don't get all of the details right in Pleasant Ridge. But we're fortunate that here they get a lot more right than wrong, and that's not the case in every place, particularly where buildings are newer. And we've kind of forgotten how to build the right way. So next steps, the process, this was introduced to the Planning Commission actually in June. The design standards were written and introduced to the Planning Commission in September. We reviewed those with the Planning Commission September, October, November. They held their public hearing and recommended approval of the zoning amendments and the design standards to the City Commission at their December meeting. We're introducing them to you here now in January. I wanted to make sure we went through this detailed explanation now so that everyone was aware what was being proposed, and then the public hearing will be in February with action in February or thereafter when the commission is comfortable and ready to move forward. And that is all I have on this subject. Turn on the lights, back to you. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Mayor?
I have a lot of learning to do. Yes.
Just a quick question. Does it apply to sides of houses on corner lots or houses facing parks, other municipal property?
Facing parks, that's a good question. It's street facing right now. Let me look at it and see if it applies to parks or not.
Okay. Thank you.
So street facing would mean corner lot side also?
Yes.
Okay.
Alleys as well?
No, not alleys. The idea here is that the parts of the house that contribute to the public realm are what we're interested in, what we're regulating. Those parts that are the private realm, we're less interested in regulating those.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, then, do I have a motion to schedule a public hearing for Tuesday, February 9th, 2015?
Your Honor, I move that the public hearing be scheduled for Tuesday, February 9th, 2015 at 7:30 PM to solicit public comments on an ordinance amending the Pleasant Ridge zoning ordinance regarding the proposed exterior design standards, M manufacturing district, use table update, and map update.
Do I have support?
Support.
Any other discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Commissioner Perry?
Yes.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Commissioner Foreman?
Yes.
Commissioner Kuziak?
Yes.
Mayor Metzger?
Yes, motion carries. Okay. The next item is an ordinance to amend certain sections of the city code regarding municipal civil infractions. We are going to have a public hearing. Is there anything need be said? Discussed this last month.
Yes, we did discuss this last month. I have nothing to add. This is, I don't know if Greg has anything you want to add on this?
We went through the lengthy explanation last month. We don't need to repeat that. But this is the first step really in a two-step process to update our civil infraction procedures. The ordinance amendments you have tonight are mostly process-oriented, and they set forth how we process a civil infraction violation, who can write tickets, and those things. If the commission adopts these, then the next step is to go through the ordinances, determine if you want to make any changes to the classification in municipal civil infraction to misdemeanor or the other way around, and also to review the fine structure and determine whether you want to make any changes to that fine structure. Those last two are not before you tonight. This is process oriented. If this goes forward, then we'll move to phase 2. And I would certainly answer any questions on any of that.
Any questions? Interesting. Okay, I'm going to open a public hearing, but I'm not going to read the half a page of what this public hearing is going to entail, as much as I love to read. So I'll open the public hearing to amend certain sections of City Code regarding municipal civil infractions. Are there any public comments? No. Hearing none, close the public hearing. Okay. And we're going to move on to amend. Do I have a motion to approve the amending certain sections of the Pleasant Ridge City Code?
Mayor, I move ordinance 416 amending certain sections of the Pleasant Ridge City Code regarding municipal civil infractions be approved.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Commissioner Foreman?
Yes.
Commissioner Perry?
Yes.
Commissioner Kuziak?
Yes.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Mayor Metzger?
Yes, motion carries. Next item is the annual meeting schedule for the following commissions. I know that in our package we received the schedules. I don't know if there's any questions or discussion necessary on those before I move for approval.
The only thing that I would point out is staff has proposed in the city commission meetings some changes due to some conflicts that we have. The first one is we do have a presidential primary election on March 8th, which would be the regular city commission meeting. We don't want to overlap with that, and there's only one Amy, so that would be a challenge.
There is only one Amy.
You gotta be up at the committee side.
So we're proposing to change that meeting to March 15, which would be the third Tuesday. The October 18 is proposed instead of that would have been October 11. That change is proposed due to Yom Kippur. And then November 15, again, we run into the general election in November. So we're proposing to move the November meeting.
Which we may not discuss.
Pardon?
Which we may not discuss.
Right. The election that shall not be named.
60 days out. No one's paying attention yet.
So that one is proposed to move to November 15 as well. So I just wanted to be clear.
We can discuss the results.
That's right.
So, okay. Thanks. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting schedule?
Your Honor, I move that the 2016 annual meeting schedule for the City Commission, Historical Commission, Planning Commission, Downtown Development Authority, and the Recreation Commission be approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Commissioner Perry?
Yes.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Commissioner Foreman?
Yes.
Commissioner Krzyjak?
Yes.
Mayor Metzger?
Yes, motion carries. Next item, city manager's report.
I was just catching my breath.
Done so well so far.
First off, I think Commissioner Krzyjak, do you have the Ridger that you had before?
Yes, I do.
Can I borrow a copy?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. The January Ridger will be hitting doorsteps later this week. With the Christmas holiday, this one always gets a little bit backed up. But lots of good information in the Ridger. A couple things, we are having the Dangerous Animals Town Hall meeting next Tuesday at 4 Ridge to discuss some potential approaches to regulating dangerous or potentially dangerous dogs. We have a couple options for how we might do that, one of which of course is do nothing. But we'll present all those next week and have a discussion. We don't have an ordinance that's been drafted yet. We wanted to have the town hall before we make any moves on that. In the Ridger, you'll find some information as well that I'd like to point out. We do have a cooperative tree purchase program that we're offering. The city is going to be planting trees on West Cambridge between Maplefield and Ridge, and also on Oxford between Ridge and, well, you know where Oxford is. Those tree plantings are being done in conjunction with the recent road reconstruction projects. We always plant the streets after we do the roads because we lose a lot of trees through the construction process. Elsewhere in the city, we're offering a cooperative purchase program where a resident who wants a tree in front of their house can pay $125. The city will cover the remaining cost of that tree, which typically breaks down to the resident will pay about a third of the cost at $125. The city will pay the remaining 2/3 of the cost, and we'll plant the tree in front of your house. Get us your checks before February 4th to be included in the order, because we have to get our order into our tree supplier. You'll also find in here that we're doing a 2016 community survey. This is really a general community survey. It's not related to the master plan or the Parks and Recreation master plan, which is what the community surveys have been in the past. This is really more a survey focused on how are we doing delivering the core functions of government, and just basically taking everyone's temperature and making sure that we're doing everything that people want us to do, that we can do, and if there's improvements that we can or should make. So please, that link is in the Ridger. It's also on the front page of the website, and you can link to it there. It's all online to save costs. We do have paper copies available. If you'd rather fill out a paper copy, call City Hall or email cityclerk@cityofpleasantridge.org, and we'll have a paper copy delivered to you. We have one other thing, I guess, that's in the Ridger that I'd like to point out is beginning Thursday, February 4, Pleasant Ridge is partnering with the City of Royal Oak to provide on-demand bus transportation for Pleasant Ridge residents.
That's great.
Yes, I think this is going to be a nice service to offer, particularly for our older residents or people who may not be able to drive. So it will be on Thursdays from 9:15 to 3:30 is the window for when you can schedule a ride. There's a phone number to call at Royal Oak to schedule a pickup, and you can drive really to anywhere within a 5-mile radius of 4 Ridge Road. So residents can use this for transportation to and from doctor's appointments, trips to the bank, the pharmacy, grocery store, really just what you need to get done as part of your daily life. And if you can't drive, this should be a real nice service to have. So that information is in the Ridger as well. And then I would just add that we have some new identity things that are rolling out. In the Ridger, you'll see a little small corner. Expect to see some new banners up on all the light posts on Woodward. This should be a very nice improvement to our streetscape along Woodward Avenue. We have a few of the cardinals grabbing onto the winter branches, I think, banners that are holding on, the survivors. But we're going to be taking those down and refreshing that with our new banner project. This is being sponsored and paid for by the DDA. The DDA went through the design process, and these are the banners that we ended up with. There's two banners. They're double-sided, so the Pleasant Ridge on the left is on one side, and then the tree is on the other side. And you'll see that the Pleasant Ridge has the sort of negative image of the tree in blue behind the Pleasant Ridge, so there's some consistency. And these will alternate. So you'll see one Pleasant Ridge banner as you drive down Woodward, and the next post will have the tree, and then it'll go back to the Pleasant Ridge. So I'm excited. This will be a nice improvement. And then along with that, we have a new logo that we're starting to roll out, which is over here on the right. You may have seen, we've noticed it. It keys off of the elements that have been long in the city seal, but you've got the curve, which represents the ridge in Pleasant Ridge. And of course, we've always had the sun and the tree on our city seal. So we're continuing those design elements and just sort of an updated and modern way. City seal is still the city seal. This is just our logo for our correspondence, our business cards, our letters, our memos, our presentations. So we're excited about these. A lot of work and a lot of review time was put into these by the Planning Commission and by our designers. So we thank everyone who worked on this and gave us our blood, sweat, and tears, I think. And yes, something, Jeff?
Just a question for Jim. Obviously, we've talked about this privately, but I wonder if you can comment on the date that's on there, because it might stand out to some people that are used to seeing a different date on some of the signs.
The date.
Someone will ask.
The famous date.
So Pleasant Ridge was incorporated as a city in 1928. The logo says established, and we talked about established versus incorporated. The city seal says incorporated 1928. Technically, legally, that is the term. Established is warmer. It feels, I guess, more friendly, so that's why we went with established. When was Pleasant Ridge established? Virgil Rose moved here in 1830. There were Native Americans here certainly long before that, traveling on the ridge. The first subdivision was in 1906. Woodward was built. So when was Pleasant Ridge established? I don't know. But 1928 is the date that we are incorporated as a city, and we are the city. That's our corporate entity that we are. So that's why 1928 is on the logo. A couple of our entrance signs at Millington and Woodward, and then on the south border and the median on Woodward say established 1919. That's when Pleasant Ridge was incorporated as a village, later incorporated as a city in 1928. It's a little bit, I don't know if confusing is the right word, mixed messages is the right word. I don't know what the right year is. But since we're using this for official city business on official city letterhead, we had to go with the 1928 date. The 1919 date on the signs, it's older, so it feels better. Makes us look like we've been here longer. So the date was a very tough thing. We kind of debated that quite a bit, which one was the right one to use. We ended up actually taking the date off the banners because we couldn't come up with what a good way to solve that particular conundrum was. So that's the saga of the date, and I don't know. That's where we ended up.
Thank you.
I just want to compliment the final product. After seeing some of the interim products, this is beautiful. I really like the look. Very clean, and since we've had discussion on other logos from other cities and issues around Berkeley and the one you sent today, unbelievable.
Yeah. And we do have a life-size mock-up of the banners will be going on Woodward. The printer has delivered the proof, so that's just kind of hanging up in City Hall if you want to touch it. I don't know. It's the building.
You said it, but I want to emphasize again, I think, just so there's no confusion, we're talking street trees only.
Yes, that is a very good point. In the past, I understand that when the city was doing tree plantings, residents, I believe, were able to have trees planted in their yards on private property. And the tree contractor that we're using, and we extended a bid that another community had secured, so we're getting great pricing on our trees. But it's actually the same tree nursery and tree provider that we used here in the past. And they were the ones who planted trees on private property. When I called them to ask if they would extend the bid, the first thing they said was, yes, we will, but only for street trees. We are not planting on private property. So we're not going to be able to get you trees at a very good price for your yard. You'll have to arrange, if you're a resident, you'll have to arrange for those yourselves, but these are only for street trees.
Thanks. Okay. Any questions for Jim? Thank you. All right, we move to other business. Who wants to start? All right, Commissioner Krzyjak.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to alert everyone to the new year for book club. The first title this year will be Dead Wake, The Last Crossing of the Lusitania by noted historian Erik Larson. I just finished this book this week, and although it was a story I felt I was very familiar with, or somewhat familiar with, the story as told by Mr. Larson was incredibly captivating, and if anyone has an interest in history, I highly recommend this book. The book club will be meeting on Monday, January 25th at 7 o'clock at the Pleasant Ridge Recreation Center to discuss Dead Wake. And if I could, one of the aspects of the story as told by Erik Larson was a revelation that the Russians had provided England with a code book that was decoding all the German transitions or the German communications between the commanders of the German Navy and their U-boats out in the water surrounding England. So they had direct information about the movements of the submarines in the channels in the waters around Germany. And this was at a time when shipping from America was still continuing, and the Lusitania, filled with over 1,000 passengers, was traveling directly through those waters. The English High Command knew that it was a very treacherous journey for the ship to be taking, but they took no action to divert, which creates a lot of suspense in the book and many questions thereafter. Hopefully that will be part of the discussion on Monday, January 25th. And like I said, if you have an interest in history or want to join us, please feel welcome. So that's for January's book club. Thank you.
Anyone else? You good? You good?
All set.
You good? Oh, all right. I have nothing to do. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You're adjourned.